I think that. Good afternoon, guys. Good afternoon, Varsha. Good afternoon, Manish. Okay, let me back to your previous unit thing. So previously we conducted one quiz and one, I asked you to submit the assignment. So I would like to share your performance. So these are the marks for the quiz and assignment. Good. Most of you attended. Most of you attempted very well. I hope they are genuine and they are good. They are doing well. But some of you are not submitted the quiz and assignments. So the time is over. So these three, these 578, 583, and 590, 5F0, 5F1, and 5G3. They didn't write the quiz one and assignment one. Obviously, they will lose their marks. Okay. As like the first unit quiz one and assignment one, there will be quiz assignment two and quiz two for the before the first bit. So that would be in the same manner. Like I'll give you an assignment and quiz after completion of unit two. So you have to go. You have to do it. The average of all the assignments I would consider, and the average of all the quiz I would consider. Oh, sorry. Did I mute it? Oh, okay, let us share the today's class. In the previous unit, we discussed about what are the visualization techniques in terms of the data character and the data classification and taxonomies and 8 visual variables and what is the pipelines for the data visualization pipelines and data cleaning pipelines and data pre-processing pipelines and 3D data visualization pipelines. All these kind of techniques and on the overview we saw that. And in the 8 visual variables, we saw different eight variables like size, marker, texture, color, and brightness, shape, all these variables. Okay, all these variable orientation and motion, all these variables will affect the representation of the data in a visualization. Now this entire unit, the unit 2, talks about the visualization technique for spatial data. So what is a spatial data? So here we are specifically talking about the spatial data because if I broadly speak in terms of the research perspective, there are two types of data available in the market. One is spatial data, next one is a temporal data. Spatial data and temporal data. Spatial data means the data which is having the two dimensionalities or which is depends upon one with another one. So it does not depends upon the time. It does not depends upon the time. Specifically, if I say about in terms of the time, if the data does not depends upon the time, then it is a spatial data. If the data is depends upon the time factor, then it is a temporal data. Then it is a temporal data. So at present, we want to see the spatial data. And the spatial data also depending upon the maps or depending upon the parts where we visualize, the spatial data have a different names also. So one of the most important and the most dominant spatial data, if I say spatial data, the terminology you can remember is geospatial data. Geospatial data. So I'm writing here geospatial data. Vaishnavi, I will share this marks in the. I will share this Excel sheet in the code now. You can see your marks in the code now. So most important spatial data is geospatial data. Geospatial data. Geospatial data. We call it as a geo information science. GIS. Okay, so the data which is sent by the satellites, the data which is we collected from the satellites, and the data we saw on the planar maps, we call it as a spatial data. We call it as a spatial data on a single plane. On a single plane. Plane means an XYZ plane or YZ plane or ZX planes. So if I slice the three-dimensional cubes into in terms of planes, then if the data is visualized in a single plane, then it is called as a spatial data. Spatial data. So which means that the 3D data is not a spatial data. Yes, 3D data is also a spatial data, but we call it as a 3D spatial data. We call it as 3D spatial data. What is the need of the spatial data? What is the need of the spatial data? Let us see what is the need of the spatial data in the next slide. So what is a spatial data? That is information about the locations and the shape of the geometrical features. So I would like to say that these two terms are utmost important in terms of the spatial data. When we are talking about the spatial data, these two terms are very much important. One is about location, next one is the shape. Location and shape. These are all very, 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 very important features in terms of the spatial data. Why it is? Because the spatial data entirely talks about what location and what is the shape and what is the relation between them. What which location, what is the shape, and what is the relation between them. Generally, if I talk a spatial data, it will talks about the location only. It will talk about the location only. Suppose it is a temporal data. The temporal data will also follow the same thing. At what time, at what location, at what shape. So, do you understand the complexity of the temporal data? Now, the third terminology will come if we talk about a temporal data. That is, at what time, at which location, what is the shape, and what is the relation between them. And the spatial data also corresponds to the scientific data visualizations only. Especially for the scientific data visualization only, we will talk about the spatial data. So scientific data means the data which is comes from the as I earlier said, the satellites, space stations, or geo earth observatories, or from the hospitals, or from the what you call the seismic fields. So all these data are called as a spatial data. All these data we call it as a spatial data. If the spatial data is mixed with the time, then we call it as a spatio-temporal data. Then we call it as a spatio-temporal data. Spatio-temporal attribute. It will have actually a spatial temporal attribute, which means that it is a spatial data with a time attribute. So it is a spatio-temporal attribute. Spatio-temporal attribute. So for that sake, I just want to show you one small example to you to understand much more clearly. I just want to open the Google Earth. Now I would like to share the next screen. Now if you see this is the Google Earth. So I want to see for India only. I can visualize in 3-dimensional mode, or I can see in a 2-dimensional mode. So I want to see in a 2-dimensional way, especially our Telangana. This is our region, Telangana. So if I see Telangana, if you observe the shape, this shape, our Hyderabad shape, can anyone tell me what shape it is? What geometrical shape it is? Please give your answer in the chat session. I would like to know the answer. That's why. Please give the answer, because this answer will tells you one important factor in the spatial data. What shape it is? Very good, Varsha. There is no specific name for the shape. Obviously, we call it as a polygons. We call these shapes as polygons. So if it is a polygon, so it have n number of vertices and n number of edges. N number of vertices and n number of edges. So let us clear this. Now, suppose I want to see the another location called Jogipet because it is most popular. Yeah, Jogipet. Now, can you tell me what shape it is? Sorry, my mouse is not working well. Can you tell me what shape is this shape? Very hard. This is also a polygon. This is also a polygon. Okay. So in the polygon, you want to find the shape. In the polygon, you are locating the objects, and that object is referred to the area in the polygon. The area in the polygon. So which means that the location and the shape. The location and the shape. That is the difference. So let us see. This is the location at present. This is the location I want to see. This location. So where you call where why we see the pyramids. So this is the location. Let us see our area. So where is our area? Let's clear off. This is the Hyderabad. See the shape. The shape is different. So look at about these shapes. This one, this one, and see this shape. If you plot anything, any shape of in the map, they are not our regular shapes. What we learned in the geometry. What we learned in the geometry. Obviously, no perfect square, no perfect rectangle, no perfect triangle is there on the location on the earth. So, how to visualize in such a scenario? How to visualize the data? How to display the data? In another sense, we call it as how to display the data. Just a second. Sir, 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 sir. Amount yes, sir. Sorry, guys. Sorry, guys. Some HOD, sir, I got it wrong. That's why I just it's okay. Now, do you understand the problem? What we are dealing in the second unit? So we are dealing about the spatial data. So that's why. What is the need of the spatial data? What is the need of the spatial data? The need of the spatial data is it supports various geometrical types, which means a point, a line string, a point. This is called a point. This is called a line string. This is called a polygon. This is called a polygon. This is called multi-point, multi-point, multi-line string, multi-line string, and a multi-polygon, multi-polygon. So all such type of geometrical shapes, all such types of geometrical shapes will dealt using spatial data. Will be dealt using spatial data. So point means the location on the map, location on the map. A line string, which means the two locations or three locations in the maps, and this polygon, what we see, the area on the map. This multi points will also represents the various cities in the various cities location in the maps. Multi-line strings, which represents the patterns in the maps, as multi-polygons, which represents the comparison of the area in the maps. Comparison of area in the maps. Let us clear it. And I would like to show you one more interesting fact from the Google map itself, because it is related to current situation and our spatial data also. So let us clear it. Now look at this. So this is the current COVID-19 situation in our Google map. So it is represented using the Google map depending upon the color temperature. Depending upon the color temperature. This is also representation of a. This is also representation of a spatial data. This is also representation of a spatial data. So depending upon the color, the intensity of the color, we understand that how much affected, how much the state is affected with the state of COVID, the state affected with the COVID. So let us see the red colors, because this is one type of a spatial data representation. So see this, each one is represented with the different types of colors. The whole India is represented with the different types of colors. So, and each state is having a different, each state is having a different shape. Each shape is having a different shape. Let us look at about the Chhattisgarh, Odisha, and Telangana. So if you look at these three states, observe carefully. So this state is a highly affected one. This state is highly affected one, well as this state is also. But if you look at this Odisha and Telangana, the color variation is different. The color variation is different. So which one is having among Telangana and Odisha? Which one is having the highest color? So anyone can post me in the chat session. Among Odisha and Telangana, which is highly affected one? Post me in the chat session. This is no, there is no mind involved in it. Just seeing the color, and you have to understand it. This is called the cognition. Yes, very good, Varsha. This is called the cognition. So how you understand that Odisha is a highly affected one, basing on these legends, basing on basing on these legends. We call it these are all we call it as legends. Legends అంటే బాలయ్యబాబు legends కాదు. Legends means the names or the representation of a graph. So depending upon the legends, you understand the visualization of the graph, and that too, this map is a dynamic map. So this is not a temporal information, because this is the current situation, which means the current at present, today's situation it is. Suppose if I want to see the tomorrow's or previous day information, it is not available at present. So you can only see the current one. So it is not a temporal data information. It is a spatial data representation. It is a spatial data representation. So because it is a dynamic in nature, you can see this. This is actual one. Now it is changed to now the map is changed to the current location, the current heat maps of the. This is we call it as a heat map. In terms of data visualization, we call this type of map is a heat map of a geospatial information. Heat map of a geospatial information. So if you look at what it is, so many are there. So this is not only for India. This site is created for all over the world. So look at it. Look about it. Right. These are spatial information. The spatial information, and each in a Google map, each one is separated in terms of a polygon. You can see to observe more clearly. If you observe this Africa, see this. There are various shapes of the polygons are there. Variant shapes of the polygons are there for the states. Whereas in India, which is having a smoother regions. So it have a two types of location. I will explain here itself. For a spatial data, for a spatial data, one is important, that is the location. We call it as coordinates. Second one is the shape. Second one is the shape. The second one is the shape. We call it as plane. Okay, so these two are important in a spatial data. So there are various kinds of spatial data depending upon. If I say a plane, then there will be one-dimensional plane is there, two-dimensional plane is there, three-dimensional planes are there. So basing on that, we have one dimensional. I am writing here itself. We have one-dimensional spatial data, two-dimensional spatial data, three-dimensional spatial data. One-dimensional spatial data, two-dimensional spatial data, three-dimensional spatial data. So although if I observe the map in a two-dimensional point of view, it is only the geological locations and the ships. But I would like to show one more details in this same Google map. So for that, I'm just clearing all these things. Now let us look about this. So that is a three-dimensional representation of a data. It is a three-dimensional representation of a data with a street view. So let us remove the street view. This is a three-dimensional representation of a channel. So although it is not a three-dimensional because it is a static one, so it is an only single plane. It is only in a single plane. For this, I would like to show Google Earth. From the Google Earth, we can visualize in a three-dimensional way. So let us look at this. This is a three-dimensional representation of a channel. Three-dimensional representation of a channel. Whereas this is two-dimensional representation, and this is a three-dimensional representation of a channel. So let us zoom it. Sorry, as I said earlier. So this is a three-dimensional representation. The axis is about XY axis. Okay. Now let us stop here. Let us go back to our thing. Now, one-dimensional data. One-dimensional data. The one-dimensional data represents the data which is varies in a single variable. The data which is varies in a single variable, we call it as a one-dimensional variable. One-dimensional data, which means either the data will change in x-axis or the data will change in y-axis. So if the data and x-axis and y-axis, which means the location and the shape, both are changes, then it is called as a two-dimensional data. Two-dimensional data. Now observe here the line graph. In this line graph, this is a representation of a electron density. Electron density in a electrode. So if you see this, this is varies only on, this is varies, the value will be varies only on -1 to +3 on x-axis position, whereas these are all kept constant, whereas these are all kept constants. Okay, so let us draw a line graph in Excel. So I just want to open our own marks. So let us draw the line graph of it. Line graph of it. This is a this is a line graph of assignments. Line graph of the assignments. So if you observe this line graph, there will be only two states of this assignment. Yes, obviously, one is 0 marks. Next one is 5 marks. Either zero or 5. Either 0 or 5. It kept constant. What is varying? The varying position is x-axis. The varying position is x-axis because your roll numbers are this marks are kept constant. Your roll numbers are changing. Your roll numbers are changing. So this is a line graph, right? What you understand from the line graph? The first and foremost understanding is what you will get from the line graph. From the line graph, we can find in a perspective of data visualization, in terms of data analytics, we can predict the data. How you will predict? How you will predict? Using fit line. Using fit line, you will predict the data. You will predict the data. Let us take this graph. Now let us do the fit line thing here. Sorry, I just 594 Barani. I submitted assignment Friday night only, sir, but I marks is 0. Is it so, Barani? So these are all the assignments I received. So you are saying 594. Yeah, Barney, I received it. Oh, instead of 0, you've given as oh. That's the way my thing is missing. Sorry for that. I will change.
The 577 also the new assignment.
577. So just a sec. Okay. 577 join.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, 577. I didn't receive the money. Page check sorry.
Ravali, sir.
So you will find one thing like mail send cheyate. Okay, na? You submitted.
Yes, sir. I submitted.
Okay, maybe on the time while your submission, maybe. Okay, you send me the PDF to my mail. So this is my mail ID. I'm writing my mail ID here. I'm only you, Ravli. Okay. So I sent to you. So that is my mail ID. You can send your assignment to my mail ID. Okay, I hope everybody is accessing this Code Now platform because the next quiz, Google Form quiz, and all the assignment links will be shared in Code Now only. So please respond your attendance. 72,
Present, sir.
73,
Present, sir.
74,
Present, sir.
75,
Present, sir.
27,
Present, sir.
78, 79,
Present, sir.
80,
Present, sir.
81, 83,
Present, sir.
84,
Sir, yeah.
84.
Sir, she have exam, sir.
Okay. 85, 86,
Present, sir.
87,
Present, sir.
88,
Present, sir.
90, 91,
Present, sir.
92, 93,
Present, sir.
94,
Present, sir.
95,
Present, sir.
97,
Present, sir.
98,
Present, sir.
99,
Present, sir.
A1, A3,
Present, sir.
A5, A6,
Present, sir. A5, present, sir.
A9,
Present,
B1,
sir.
B2,
Present, sir.
B3,
Present, sir.
B8,
Present, sir.
C0,
Present, sir.
C1,
Present, sir.
C1,
Even present, sir. Present.
C5,
Present, sir.
C8,
Sir, 585 present, sir.
585, just a sec. C9,
Present, sir. C9.
B0,
Present, sir. D0.
B6,
Sir, D6 or technical seminar, sir.
A6,
Present, sir.
E7,
Present, sir.
F0, F1, F2, F3,
Present, sir.
F5, F7,
Present, sir.
F8,
Present, sir.
G3, G4, G7,
Present, sir.
585.
592 present. 581, sir.
Just a second. 5,
591.
591. Okay. 590,
581, sir.
what about 591?
Present, sir. 581.
5C not. 5C not. Okay. Anybody? Just wait. 5C not.
Sir, A1.
5A1.
Yes.
Okay.
Sir,
Yeah.
I sent you mail, sir. 577.
577. You sent a mail?
Yes.
Okay, ma'am. And somebody is saying 5C not. Okay. Let me check 5C not once. But see series C1, C5, C9. I received. 5C not. I didn't receive your assignment. 5C not. You can send the assignment through my mail ID. I'm sending my mail ID to you. Hey Manish, I will reset the password. Will you please send me a reminder in WhatsApp, please, after the class? 583. Okay, you may send your assignment through my mail ID.
Yes, sir.
Hope everything is okay. 583.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, let us stop share. Let us share the screen for my presentation. So, for a two-dimensional things, the most things we talked about the scrappers, the skyscrapers or earth scrappers, or the just a second. Okay, 579. If anybody wants to reset your code now passwords, please send your reminder in my WhatsApp after the class session. So let us see. Let us show you one 3D visualization thing. In a two-dimensional representation, here this represents a two-dimensional representation, 2D spatial data of a rubber sheet. This is a 2D spatial data of a rubber sheet. This is a 2D spatial data of a rubber sheet. This is a 2D spatial data of a rubber sheet where this plane is shifted to more than one regions, more than one plane. If you see this, so some part of this sheet is in xy plane, some part of this sheet in yz plane. Similarly, this is the MRI of a human brain, where the brain is there in xy region to yz region. It extended to xy region to yz regions. So the which means the shape is also varying, the shape is also varying, and the location is also varying. So these kind of data, so we call it as a two-dimensional spatial data. Two-dimensional spatial data. What will vary in two-dimensional spatial data? What will vary in two-dimensional spatial data? When I'm talking about a two-dimensional spatial data, whereas in one-dimensional spatial data, only x or y will vary. In two-dimensional spatial data, in 2D spatial data, both x and y will vary. Here x is also varying and y is also varying. And not only that, there is another planar attribute is also varying. So in an engineering perspective, we call it as spatial and planars. Whereas in the right side, what you see, we call it as, there are sometimes various types of views are there in medical representation: spatial, sagittal, coronal, and axial. These are all the different terminology in a medical terminology, where this is also represents the two-dimensional representation, except the axial view, axial view which represents from toy to, which means your toy to your head, and if you're standing on a paper from toy to head, and the paper is moves from your toy to head, then it is a axial representation. Whereas in sagittal, from left to right, it will come. So which is the planar varying in a medical representation. If, the same engineering attributes, if I applied in the medical terminology, then the terminology will differ, but the same phenomena will works. Okay. So all types of what you see, a single x-ray chart or anything, they are all two-dimensional spatial charts. Two-dimensional spatial charts because there, if you get that slice, you will get there are 256 will be there. Let us see one example on what you are seeing here. If you observe closely here, so you find that that is the date and age, and this is the acquisition. So which means among among the five slices, this is the first image. Similarly, here also in the rubber sheet, we want to find the thickness of the rubber sheet. Where x is varying, and the y is also corresponding is also varying. So this talks about the two-dimensional spatial data. So three-dimensional, two-dimensional spatial data in detail, we will talk in the next session. Okay, if you have any doubts, you can ask me. I'm just stopping my session. If you have any problem with the code now, you can post your roll number after this class to my WhatsApp. So still one more minute is there. So if you have any doubts, you can ask me.